I sat alone at a corner table of Bellini's, the nicest Italian restaurant in town, surrounded by empty chairs. The white tablecloth was perfectly pressed. 5 place settings of fine china gleamed under soft lighting. A small reserved sign had been removed when the hostess seated me. My pearl earrings caught the light as I checked my phone for the 20th time. 7:30 p.m. They were now 90 minutes late. My blue dress, the one my late husband William said made my eyes look brighter, felt suddenly too formal, too hopeful. I smoothed a wrinkle from the fabric and forced a smile as the waiter approached. "Can I get you another glass of water, ma'am? Or perhaps you'd like to order something while you wait. They should be here any minute." I said the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. "My son just texted they're on their way." That was a lie. Marcus hadn't texted at all. The waiter nodded politely, but I saw the flash of pity in his eyes. He'd been watching me sit alone for over an hour, making excuses for a family that wasn't coming. This wasn't just any dinner. This was my 75th birthday, a milestone I never thought I'd reach after William's heart attack 5 years ago left me a widow. At the next table, a large family celebrated something. Laughter erupted as a little girl blew out candles on a cake. The grandmother, probably younger than me, beamed as her family surrounded her with affection. My throat tightened. When my phone finally buzzed at 8:15, my hand trembled as I answered. "Mom!" Marcus's voice came through slightly muffled by background noise. Music pulsed behind him. Glasses clinked. People laughed. "Marcus, I'm still at Bellini's. Are you on your way?" My voice remained steady, practiced at hiding disappointment. A pause. "Oh, about that. Something came up. Claire's coworker is having this thing, and we thought we told you we couldn't make it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "You didn't tell me." "Really, I could have sworn—" He moved the phone, speaking to someone else. A woman's laugh. Claire, my daughter-in-law, floated through the receiver. "Marcus, I said it's my 75th birthday dinner." Another pause. Then Claire's voice closer now, as if she'd taken the phone. "Your age means nothing to us, Eleanor." Not angry, not apologetic, just careless, like she was commenting on the weather or the color of a napkin. My throat closed completely. The restaurant sounds faded. For several seconds I couldn't speak. My hands went cold against the warm phone. "Mom, you still there?" Marcus asked, his voice distant. I ended the call without another word. The waiter returned, his expression gentle. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" "Just the check, please," I managed. "My family won't be joining me after all." "But you haven't eaten anything." "The check, please." When he returned with the receipt, he quietly said, "Happy birthday, ma'am." It was the only time anyone said it that night. I drove home in silence, the moonlight washing over empty streets. My house was dark when I arrived, just as I'd left it. No surprise party waiting. No cards on the table. Nothing but the echo of my footsteps as I hung up my blue dress and removed my pearl earrings. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I finally allowed myself to see what had been happening for years. Every Friday morning for 3 years, I'd sent $700 to Marcus and Claire. Every single week, without fail. Over $100,000 from William's pension and our modest savings. Money that was supposed to sustain me through my final years. And on the one day that mattered to me, they couldn't even show up. That was the night I decided to stop being generous. I wanted to see what love looked like when the money stopped. Every Friday morning for the past 3 years, I had followed the same routine. Wake up at 7:30, make a pot of coffee, the cheap store brand now, not the good kind William and I used to splurge on. Take my blood pressure pills with a glass of water, cutting them in half to make them last longer. Sit at my kitchen table with my phone. By 9:00 a.m., I would open my banking app and send $700 to Marcus's account. Without fail, rain or shine, holiday or regular day, $700 every Friday. It began about 3 years ago, not long after William passed. Marcus called one afternoon, his voice tight with worry, something I hadn't heard since he was a little boy afraid of thunderstorms. "Mom," he'd said, "I hate to ask, but could you help us out for a little while, just until I find something steady?" His marketing firm had downsized. He'd lost his job. With 2 children in private school, a mortgage on their suburban home, and Claire working part-time at a dental office, they were drowning in bills. The electricity had almost been cut off. They were eating rice and canned soup for dinner. Of course I said yes. What kind of mother wouldn't? William had left me his postal service pension and some savings. It wasn't a fortune by any means, but we'd always lived simply. We didn't take exotic vacations or drive luxury cars. We believed in paying off debts and setting aside money for emergencies. So when Marcus needed help, I had something to give. That first transfer felt good, purposeful. It felt like I was still needed in this world. Like even though my husband was gone and my body was slowing down and my house felt too empty, I still had value. I could still protect my child. "Mom, it went through. Thank you," Marcus had called that first Friday afternoon. "I don't know what we'd do without you." His gratitude was genuine then. I could hear the relief in his voice, the weight lifting from his shoulders. "You'd do the same for me," I told him. And I believed that. I truly did. For the first few months, I'd get a text every week, a heart emoji, a quick "thanks, Mom." Sometimes Claire would send a photo of the children with a caption like, "Because of Grandma, we're okay this week." It made me feel connected, like I wasn't just an old woman living alone with her memories and her pills in her too-quiet house. But then something changed. The thank you texts became shorter, less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. Instead, I'd get a message on Thursday nights, "Hey Mom, don't forget tomorrow," as if I'd ever forgotten. As if I hadn't set an alarm on my phone just to make sure the money went through on time. Then the requests started changing. "Mom, could you send a little extra this week? The car needs new tires." "Mom, we're behind on the water bill. Can you cover it?" "Mom, the kids need winter coats. Could you add another 100? And every time I said yes, because that's what mothers do. We give, we stretch, we sacrifice. I started skipping my own doctor's appointments because the co-pays added up. I stopped buying the good coffee. I wore the same 3 sweaters all winter because I didn't want to spend money on myself when they needed it more. My friends at church started noticing. One Sunday, Janice pulled me aside after service. "Eleanor, honey, are you okay? You look tired." I smiled and told her I was fine, just getting older. But Janice knew me too well. She lowered her voice. "Is it Marcus?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to admit it out loud. Didn't want to say that my son had stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an ATM. "He's going through a hard time," I finally said. Janice squeezed my hand. "Just make sure you're not going through one too." I thought about her words all week, but when Friday came, I sent the money anyway, because the truth was I was terrified. Terrified that if I stopped, Marcus would stop calling altogether. Terrified that I'd lose him, that I'd become the kind of mother people forget about. The kind whose calls go to voicemail. The kind who spends holidays alone. So I kept giving, kept sending, kept pretending everything was normal. But deep down, I knew it wasn't help anymore. It was habit. And habits don't require gratitude. They just require repetition. There's a photograph on my mantle. It's faded now, the colors soft yellows and blues. In it, William and I stand in front of this very house, the same house I'm sitting in now. We're young, maybe 30, and we're smiling like we just won the lottery. We hadn't won anything. We just signed the mortgage papers. William worked at the post office for 32 years. I worked part-time at the library and took care of Marcus when he was small. We didn't have much, but what we had, we built together. Every piece of furniture, every coat of paint, every memory pressed into these walls. William used to say, "We don't need to be rich. We just need to be steady." And we were steady and strong and committed to building a life that meant something. When Marcus was born, William cried. I'd never seen him cry before that. He held our son in his arms and whispered, "I'm going to teach you how to be a man." And he did. Or at least he tried. I remember Marcus at 8 years old standing in the driveway with William learning how to change a tire. William didn't just show him how. He explained why it mattered. One day someone you love might need help and you'll know what to do. Marcus listened. He always listened back then. On Sundays, William would take him to the hardware store. They'd walk the aisles together talking about tools and projects and how to fix things instead of replacing them. Money doesn't grow on trees, William would say, so we take care of what we have. I taught Marcus other things. How to write thank you notes. How to apologize when he was wrong. How to look people in the eye when he spoke to them. How to show up when he said he would. When Marcus was 16, he got his first job bagging groceries. He came home that first Friday with a check for $83, and he was so proud. William shook his hand like he was a grown man. The next morning, Marcus handed me a small bouquet of daisies. They were a little wilted, probably from the discount bin at the store, but they were the most beautiful flowers I'd ever seen. "For you, Mom," he'd said, because you always take care of me. I kept one of those daisies pressed in my Bible. It's still there. Back then I thought I'd done everything right. I thought the values we'd instilled in him would last forever. I thought love and respect were things you learned young and carried with you always. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Maybe it was when he went to college and met Claire. She came from a different kind of family, the kind that measured success by the size of your house and the brand of your car, the kind that believed image mattered more than integrity. Or maybe it was when he got his first corporate job and started wearing ties and talking about quarterly earnings and networking events. He'd come home for holidays and seemed distracted, like our little house wasn't enough anymore. William noticed it too. One Christmas after Marcus and Claire left early, William sat beside me on the couch and said quietly, "He's forgetting where he came from." I defended Marcus then. "He's just busy. He's building his own life." But William shook his head. Building a life and forgetting your foundation are two different things. I didn't want to believe him. I didn't want to think that the little boy who brought me wilted daisies had grown into a man who saw his mother as a resource instead of a person. But looking back now, I can see it clearly. The shift was slow, gradual, like watching a photograph fade in the sunlight. You don't notice it happening until one day you look closely and realize the colors are gone. After William died, I thought Marcus would step up. I thought he'd remember everything his father taught him. I thought he'd be the man William raised him to be. And for a while he tried. He called more often. He helped me sort through William's things. He held my hand at the funeral. But then life got hard for him. And suddenly I wasn't his mother anymore. I was his solution, his safety net, his Friday morning deposit. The pension William left me was supposed to be my security. The savings we'd built together penny by penny year after year were supposed to carry me through my final years with dignity. Instead, they became Marcus's backup plan, Claire's shopping fund, the reason they could go out to eat while I reheated leftovers. I used to think about what William would say if he were still here. Would he be disappointed? Angry, heartbroken, probably all three, because we'd taught Marcus to value people over money, to show gratitude, to honor the sacrifices others made for him. But somewhere along the way, he unlearned it all. He once gave me flowers on payday. Now he gave me deadlines. The thing about giving is that once you start, people expect you to keep going. And the thing about expectations is that they grow quietly like weeds in a garden you forgot to tend. It started small enough. "Mom, the landlord raised the rent. Could you help with the difference this month, $200? Mom, the washing machine broke. We need a new one or we'll have to go to the laundromat every week, $400. Mom, Claire's car needs repairs. The mechanic says it's not safe to drive, $600. Each time I told myself it was temporary. Each time I believed them when they said it was the last time. Each time I transferred the money before they even finished explaining why they needed it. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when no one's paying attention. Within a year, the $700 every Friday wasn't enough anymore. There were always extras, always emergencies, always something that couldn't wait. I started keeping a list in my mind, not because I wanted to throw it back in their faces, but because I needed to remember, needed to make sure I wasn't imagining things. January heater repair, February dental work for Claire, March new tires and a battery, April spring break trip for the kids. Wait, spring break trip, I remember pausing when Marcus mentioned that one. "A trip?" I asked. "Just a little getaway," he'd said quickly. "The kids have been so stressed with school. We thought it would be good for them." I wanted to ask how they could afford a vacation when they could barely afford groceries. I wanted to say that maybe they should save that money for actual emergencies, but I didn't, because saying no felt like slamming a door. And I was terrified of what would happen if that door closed. So I said yes. Again. The worst part wasn't the money itself. It was what I gave up to provide it. I started missing my own doctor's appointments. My knees had been bothering me for months, aching every time I stood up or climbed the stairs. My doctor wanted me to see a specialist, maybe get some physical therapy, but the co-pays were expensive. If I spent money on myself, that meant less for Marcus, less for the kids, less for keeping them afloat. So I told myself I'd go next month, then the month after. Then eventually I stopped scheduling appointments altogether. I just took ibuprofen when the pain got bad and kept moving. My blood pressure medication ran out, and instead of refilling it right away, I waited, stretched, it skipped days. Because the pharmacy wasn't cheap, and every dollar I spent on myself felt like a dollar I was stealing from them. One Sunday after church, Janice invited me to lunch. Nothing fancy, just a little cafe downtown where they made good soup and fresh bread. I almost said yes. I wanted to say yes. But then I thought about the $12 it would cost, and I thought about Marcus's text from the night before asking if I could help with the electric bill. Maybe next time, I told Janice. She looked at me for a long moment, not with pity, but with concern. You're allowed to live your own life, you know, she said gently. I smiled. I know, but I didn't. Not really. A few weeks later, Janice and 2 other friends from church came to visit me at home. They brought tea and cookies, and we sat in my living room talking about everything and nothing. Then Janice said, "Eleanor, sweetheart, we're worried about you." I set my teacup down carefully. "I'm fine." "You're not," said Dorothy, the older of the 3. She had that no-nonsense tone that only women in their 80s can pull off. "You look exhausted, you've lost weight, and you're wearing the same coat you wore last winter." "It's a perfectly good coat," I said quietly. "That's not the point," Janice said. "The point is that you're giving everything away and leaving nothing for yourself." I felt my throat tighten. "They need me." "They need your money," Dorothy corrected. "That's not the same thing." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell them they didn't understand that Marcus was going through a hard time, that family helps family. But the words wouldn't come because deep down I knew they were right. "What happens if you stop?" Janice asked softly. "What happens if you say no?" I looked at my hands folded in my lap. Then maybe they stop calling. There it was, the truth I'd been avoiding for months, the fear that kept me sending money even when my own cabinets were half empty, even when my body hurt and my bank account shrank and my friends looked at me with worried eyes. I wasn't afraid of being broke. I was afraid of being unloved. Because at least when I sent the money, my phone rang. At least when I said yes, I got a text back. At least when I kept giving, I wasn't completely alone. But what I didn't realize then was that I was already alone. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Holidays have a way of exposing the truth about relationships. When you're loved, holidays feel warm. When you're forgotten, they feel like punishment. That year, Thanksgiving was the first crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. Marcus had promised they'd come for dinner. I'd spent 2 days preparing. I made his favorite stuffing, the one with cranberries and pecans that William used to say was better than any restaurant's. I baked 2 pies because I couldn't decide between pumpkin and apple, so I made both. I set the table with my good china, the set my mother had given me when I got married. I even put out the nice napkins, the cloth ones I only used for special occasions. By 2:00 in the afternoon, everything was ready. The turkey was golden brown. The house smelled like butter and cinnamon, and all the things that make a place feel like home. I changed into a nice blouse and put on a little lipstick. Then I waited. 3:00 came and went. I texted Marcus. No response. By 4:00 I called. It went to voicemail. By 5:00 the food was getting cold. I covered everything with foil and put it in the oven on low heat just to keep it warm a little longer. At 6:30 my phone finally buzzed. "Hey, Mom. So sorry. Claire's sister invited us last minute and the kids really wanted to see their cousins. We'll come by this weekend, promise." I stared at that message for a long time. Read it 3 times. Tried to find an apology that actually sounded sorry. Tried to find an explanation that made sense. But all I could see was the phrase, "last minute," as if I were the backup plan, the second choice, the option they'd consider if nothing better came along. I didn't respond. I just turned off the oven, covered the food, and sat at the table alone. The good china looked ridiculous now. Fancy plates for an audience of 1. I ate a small plate of stuffing and half a slice of pie. The rest I packed up and put in the freezer. I'd be eating Thanksgiving leftovers until Christmas. The next morning, my neighbor Helen knocked on my door. She's a kind woman, always smiling, always baking something. "How was your Thanksgiving?" she asked brightly. "I bet Marcus and the family loved your cooking." I smiled. "Oh, you know how it is. Everyone's so busy these days." "But they made it, though." I hesitated just for a second, then nodded. Of course. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth felt worse. Christmas was harder. I bought gifts weeks in advance. A toy truck for little Tommy, a science kit for Lily, a beautiful scarf for Claire, a leather wallet for Marcus. I wrapped each one carefully, writing their names on little tags in my neatest handwriting. I imagined their faces when they opened them. Imagined the kids squealing with delight. Imagined Claire saying thank you. Imagined Marcus hugging me and calling me the best mom in the world. "I'll drop the gifts off on Christmas Eve," I told Marcus on the phone. "Or you could come here," I suggested. "I'll make hot chocolate." "Sounds great, Mom," Marcus said. "We'll let you know." Christmas Eve came. No text, no call. I tried not to think about it. I watched old movies, drank tea, went to bed early. Christmas morning, I woke up to a message sent at 11:42 the night before. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Sorry we couldn't make it. Super busy with Claire's family. We'll grab the gifts next week." Next week turned into 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a month. Eventually, I just left the wrapped boxes in the corner of my guest room. Out of sight, but not out of mind. When people at church asked about my holidays, I lied. I told them everything was wonderful. Told them the kids were growing so fast. Told them Marcus and Claire were doing great. But inside, I felt like I was disappearing because the truth was becoming clearer every single day. I was invisible to them unless they needed something. I existed in their world only when the first of the month rolled around and bills came due. Only when the car broke down or the kids needed new shoes or Claire wanted a weekend getaway. The rest of the time, I was a ghost. I started noticing things I hadn't let myself see before. How they never called just to talk. How they never asked how I was feeling or if I needed anything. How every conversation somehow circled back to money. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm okay, sweetheart. My knee's been acting up, but I'm managing." "That's good. Hey, speaking of managing, we're a little short this month. Think you could help with groceries?" Every time. Every single time. One evening, I sat in my living room staring at my phone. I scrolled through my call log. 12 calls from Marcus in the past 2 months. I opened the messages. Not one of them asked how I was. Not one said I love you or I miss you. They were all requests, all needs, all demands, dressed up as questions. Even my voicemail sounded lonely. My 75th birthday fell on a Friday. I woke up that morning feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe after everything that had happened over the past year, I should have known better. But hope doesn't ask permission. It just shows up uninvited and whispers that maybe this time will be different. Marcus had called 3 days earlier. "Mom, we want to take you out for your birthday. Somewhere nice?" The kids are excited. I'd felt my chest tighten with something warm. "You don't have to do that." "We want to," he insisted. "You've done so much for us. Let us do this for you." I agreed. How could I not? That morning, I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes trying to decide what to wear. I settled on my blue dress, the one William used to love. It still fit, though it hung a little looser now than it used to. I put on the pearl earrings William gave me on our 30th anniversary. I brushed my hair and pinned it back neatly. I even put on a little makeup, something I hadn't bothered with in months. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked alive again, like a woman who mattered. I got to the restaurant 15 minutes early. It was a small Italian place downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and candles on every table. Soft music played in the background, something classical and gentle. The hostess smiled when I walked in. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under Marcus Thompson. Party of 5. She checked her book and nodded. "Right this way." She led me to a corner table near the window. It was perfect. Quiet but not isolated, close enough to see other families celebrating, but far enough to have our own conversation. I sat down and arranged my purse on the chair beside me. The waiter came over, a young man with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" "Just water for now, please. I'm waiting for my family." "Of course, and happy birthday." I blinked. "How did you know?" He grinned. "It's on the reservation. We'll make sure you get a special dessert later." I thanked him, feeling that warm hope spread a little wider in my chest. The restaurant filled up slowly. Families, couples, groups of friends. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone seemed to belong to someone. I checked my phone. 6:15. They were supposed to be here at 6:00. Maybe they hit traffic. Maybe one of the kids needed a last-minute bathroom stop. Maybe they were running late because they stopped to get me flowers. I smiled at the thought. Flowers would be nice. 6:30. Still nothing. I texted Marcus, "I'm here. See you soon." No response. The waiter came back. "Would you like to order an appetizer while you wait?" "Not yet, thank you. They should be here any minute." He nodded, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Pity, maybe. or understanding like he'd seen this before. By 7:00, I'd finished 3 glasses of water. My hands were folded in my lap, my phone face up on the table so I wouldn't miss a notification. I watched a family at the next table, grandmother, parents, 3 kids. They were laughing about something, passing plates around, sharing bites of each other's meals. The grandmother said something that made everyone laugh, and the youngest child leaned over and kissed her cheek. I looked away. At 7:30, I couldn't wait anymore. My fingers shook as I pressed Marcus's name on my phone. It rang 4 times. Then I heard his voice slightly muffled, like he was in a loud room. "Hey, Mom." "Marcus, I'm still at the restaurant." A pause. Then faintly I heard music voices clinking glasses. "Oh yeah, sorry about that." "Sorry about that," like he'd forgotten to pick up milk from the store. "Where are you?" I asked quietly. "We're at a friend's thing. Claire's coworker is having a party. We thought we told you we couldn't make it." My throat felt tight. "You didn't." "Oh, well, it's not a big deal." And then I heard Claire's voice in the background. "Your age means nothing to us anyway." I heard her laugh. Not at me, maybe, but it didn't matter. The sound cut through me like glass. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but sit there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to them celebrate someone else's life, while mine sat alone at a table set for 5. "Mom, you still there?" I ended the call. For a moment I just sat there staring at the candle flickering in front of me. Then I felt something warm on my cheek. I touched it and realized I was crying. The waiter appeared beside me, his expression gentle. "Ma'am, can I get you anything?" I shook my head. "Just the check, please." He hesitated. "You don't want to order?" "No, thank you." He brought the bill and I paid for the water I'd drunk. When he returned with the receipt, he said softly, "Happy birthday." I managed to smile. "Thank you." I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't cry anymore. Just drove gripping the steering wheel with both hands, trying to keep myself together. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time staring at my front door. The porch light was on. The windows were dark. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Empty. Inside, I took off the blue dress and hung it back in the closet. Put away the pearls. Washed my face. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about what had just happened, what had been happening for months, maybe years. And for the first time, I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding, maybe love shouldn't cost $700 a week. Saturday morning, I woke up at my usual time, 7:30. The sun was just starting to come through my bedroom curtains, soft and pale. I made coffee, took my pills, sat at the kitchen table. But this time I didn't reach for my phone. I just sat there, hands wrapped around my mug, watching steam rise and disappear into nothing. My banking app was right there, 1 tap away, like it had been every Friday for 3 years. But it wasn't Friday anymore. It was Saturday. And something inside me had shifted. I kept thinking about that restaurant table, the 5 empty chairs, the waiter's gentle eyes, the sound of Claire's laugh in the background while I sat there alone wearing my best dress, waiting for people who never intended to show up. Your age means nothing to us. The words circled in my mind over and over until they didn't even sound like words anymore. Just noise. Just cruelty dressed up as honesty. I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot and it burned my tongue a little, but I didn't care. For 3 years, I'd sent that money like clockwork. Never late, never questioned, never asked for proof of where it went or what it paid for. I'd trusted them, believed them, sacrificed for them. And what had it bought me? Empty chairs. Ignored calls. A birthday spent alone. I picked up my phone, not to open the banking app, but just to hold it, to feel its weight, to remind myself that I had a choice. I could send the money, pretend nothing happened, smooth it over, keep the peace. Or I could stop. The thought terrified me because stopping meant facing the truth I'd been running from. It meant admitting that the only thing connecting me to my son was a weekly transaction. It meant risking the one thing I feared most, losing him completely. But then I thought about something William used to say when Marcus was young. If you have to beg someone to love you, they don't. I set the phone down, and I did nothing. Sunday came and went. I watered my plants. I read a book. I made soup. I lived. Monday afternoon, my phone rang. Claire's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a moment before answering. "Hello?" "Hey." Her voice was light, casual. "Your transfer didn't go through. Did you forget?" There it was. No greeting. No asking how I was. Just straight to the money. "No," I said simply. A pause. I could almost hear her brain recalibrating, trying to make sense of my answer. What do you mean, no? I mean it's not coming. The lightness in her voice vanished. You can't just stop. We depend on that. Something about the way she said that instead of you made everything clear. They didn't depend on me. They depended on what I provided. There was a difference. I know, I said quietly. That's the problem. Her tone sharpened. What's that supposed to mean? I could have explained. Could have listed all the missed holidays and ignored calls and broken promises. Could have told her how much it hurt to sit alone at that restaurant waiting for people who were laughing at someone else's party. But I didn't, because the truth was she already knew. They both did. They just didn't care. It means I'm done, I said. Done. She laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind of sound people make when they're angry, but trying to stay in control. You can't be serious. We have bills. The kids need things. Marcus is still looking for steady work. Then maybe he should look harder. Silence, cold and sharp. Are you really going to do this? She asked, her voice tight. After everything we've been through, after we've counted on you? I closed my eyes, took a breath. You counted on my money, not on me. That's not fair. Neither was my birthday. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. Fine. Do what you want, but don't expect us to come running when you need something. The threat hung in the air between us, sharp and clear, but it didn't scare me. Not anymore. Because the truth was I'd needed them for months. Needed them to show up. Needed them to remember. Needed them to care. And they hadn't. So what exactly was I losing? Goodbye, Claire. I hung up before she could respond. My hand was shaking a little as I set the phone down. My heart was beating fast, that anxious kind of fast that comes after you've done something you can't take back. But underneath the fear, there was something else, relief. For 3 years, I'd carried the weight of their lives on my shoulders. I'd stretched myself thin, gave until I had nothing left, and convinced myself that sacrifice was the same as love. But it wasn't. Love shows up. Love remembers. Love doesn't put a price tag on your worth. I walked to the window and looked out at my small backyard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed painting. There were 100 little things I'd neglected because I was too busy taking care of everyone else. Maybe it was time to take care of myself. For the first time in years, silence felt like freedom. The messages started the next morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating toast with jam when my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times in a row. I picked it up and saw Marcus's name. 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails, 4 text messages. I set the phone back down and finished my breakfast. When I finally listened to the voicemails, his voice was strained tight, like he was trying very hard not to yell. Mom, call me back. We need to talk about this. The second one was sharper. Mom, this isn't funny. You can't just cut us off without warning. Call me. I deleted both and moved on to the texts. Mom, please, let's talk. I don't understand why you're doing this. Claire's upset. The kids are asking about you. You've never acted like this before. Please call me back. That last one almost made me laugh because of course I'd never acted like this before. I'd never valued myself enough to say no. I didn't respond to any of the messages. By Wednesday, their tone had changed. The desperation had hardened into something else. Anger maybe, or entitlement pretending to be anger. You know what, fine. Be selfish. See if we care. You're really going to abandon your grandkids like this. What kind of grandmother does that? I hope you're happy sitting alone in that house. Each message was meant to cut, meant to make me feel guilty, meant to pull me back into the role I'd been playing for 3 years. But I just read them one by one and felt nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Maybe I felt clarity because every angry word they sent proved exactly what I'd suspected. They didn't miss me. They missed my money. Thursday morning, my phone rang a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Hello. Aunt Eleanor, it's James. Marcus's cousin. We hadn't spoken in over a year. James, what a surprise. Yeah, listen. He sounded uncomfortable. Marcus called me. He's really upset. Says you two had some kind of falling out. I stayed quiet, waiting. He says you just stopped helping them out of nowhere. That you're not answering his calls. He's worried about you. Worried about me? That was rich. I'm fine, James, but thank you for checking. So it's true you stopped sending money. There it was. Even James, who I'd babysat when he was little, who I'd given birthday cards to every year, had been told the story in terms of money. It's more complicated than that, I said gently. Look, I'm not trying to take sides, but they've got kids, you know, and Marcus is still looking for work. Maybe you could just help them out a little longer. For the kids? Everyone always said it was for the kids, as if using children as bargaining chips somehow made the request more noble. The kids will be fine, I said. Goodbye, James. I hung up before he could say more. Over the next few days, I got calls from 2 other relatives and a family friend I hadn't heard from in 5 years. All of them had the same script. All of them had been contacted by Marcus or Claire. All of them were trying to convince me to reconsider. It was exhausting, but it was also revealing because not one of them asked me what had happened. Not one asked if I was okay. They all just assumed I was being unreasonable, cruel, selfish. The word selfish kept coming up. Like wanting to keep my own money earned by my husband's 32 years of hard work was somehow a moral failing. I started keeping a folder. Just a plain manila folder I found in my desk drawer. Inside, I put printed copies of every bank transfer, every text message asking for money, every receipt for things I'd paid for every bill I'd covered. I didn't know why I was doing it at first. It just felt important to have proof. Not for them, they wouldn't care about proof. But for me, because when you're gaslit for long enough, you start to doubt your own memory. You start to wonder if maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're being unreasonable. Maybe you're remembering things wrong. But the numbers didn't lie. Over 3 years, I'd sent them more than $100,000. $100,000. And in return, I'd gotten empty chairs, forgotten holidays, and a daughter-in-law who thought my 75th birthday meant nothing. I stared at those bank statements for a long time. Seeing it all laid out like that in black and white made something inside me settle, made me feel less crazy, less guilty. I wasn't abandoning them. I was saving myself. Friday afternoon, Janice called. Her voice was gentle but concerned. Eleanor, honey, have you been online today? No, I said. Why? She hesitated. You might want to check Facebook. Claire posted something. My stomach tightened. What kind of something? Just look and then call me back if you need to talk. I hung up and opened the app, my fingers suddenly cold. There at the top of my feed was Claire's face, and she was crying. The video was titled, When Family Turns Their Back on You. Claire sat in what looked like her living room. Tissues in hand, makeup smudged just enough to look authentic. The lighting was soft, flattering. She'd clearly thought about the setup. I don't usually do this, she began, her voice shaking slightly. But I need to talk about something that's been breaking my heart. I should have closed the app, should have turned off my phone and walked away, but I couldn't. I just sat there watching her perform. My husband's mother has decided to cut us off completely. No warning, no conversation. She just stopped helping us, and now we're struggling to keep the lights on. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We've always been there for her, always. When she needed us, we showed up. But the moment we needed her support, she turned her back on us and our children. Our children! She said it like I'd personally taken food out of their mouths. I don't understand how someone can claim to love their grandchildren but refuse to help them. How can you watch your family suffer and do nothing? The comments started rolling in almost immediately. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Some people are just selfish. Praying for your family. Each comment felt like a knife, but I kept watching. Claire continued, her voice rising with emotion. We've tried talking to her. We've apologized for anything we might have done wrong, but she won't even answer our calls. It's like we don't exist anymore. She leaned closer to the camera, her expression pained. If anyone knows what it's like to be abandoned by family, please share your story. I just need to know we're not alone. The video had been up for 20 minutes and already had over 200 views. People were sharing it, commenting, taking sides without knowing a single fact. I set my phone down, my hands trembling slightly. This was what it had come to, a public trial where I was the villain and she was the victim, where 3 years of generosity vanished and all that remained was my refusal to continue. For a moment I felt something dangerous rising in my chest, anger, the urge to comment, to defend myself, to list everything I'd done for them. But then I remembered something William used to say. The truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be true. So I did nothing. I made myself a cup of tea, sat in my favorite chair, and waited. By evening, Janice called again. Have you seen the comments now? No, I said. Should I? Yes. There was something in her voice. Not concerned this time, something lighter. You really should. I opened the app again and scrolled to Claire's video. The comment section had changed. Someone named Jennifer had written, "Wait, didn't you just post about your new diamond bracelet last week?" Below that, someone else added, "And wasn't there a vacation photo from 2 weeks ago? Spa day and everything?" Another comment. "I'm confused. If you can't keep the lights on, how are you affording designer purses?" I scrolled up to Claire's profile and looked at her recent posts. There they were, photos from the past month. A new bracelet with the caption, "Treating myself." A weekend getaway with champagne glasses and sunset views. A shopping haul showing 3 bags from expensive stores. The comments on the live stream kept coming. This doesn't add up. Maybe the grandmother had a good reason. You can't cry poverty and post luxury items in the same week. Someone had even screenshot her posts and shared them side by side with her tearful video. The contrast was damning. I watched as the narrative shifted in real time. The sympathy turned to skepticism. The support turned to questions. One commenter wrote, "My mom helped me when I was struggling, and I called her every week just to thank her. I didn't wait until she stopped to suddenly care." Another said, "If she's been helping you for years and you can't even show up for her birthday, maybe she's not the problem." I didn't know who these people were. Didn't know how they'd found out about the birthday. Maybe someone we knew had shared the story. Maybe Claire had mentioned it in a comment without realizing how it sounded. Either way, the truth was spreading faster than the lies. Claire must have noticed because within an hour the video was gone deleted, as if erasing it would erase what people had seen. But the screenshots remained. The comments had been shared. The questions had been asked. I sat back in my chair, holding my tea, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not victory, just release. Because I hadn't needed to defend myself, hadn't needed to argue or explain or beg people to believe me. The truth had defended itself. Claire had exposed her own contradictions, her own priorities, her own version of reality that didn't match the facts. My phone buzzed with a text from Janice. "You okay?" I smiled. "I'm fine." "Good, because half the church saw that mess, and everyone's talking about how proud they are of you." I didn't need their pride, but it was nice to know I wasn't as alone as I'd felt. That night I slept better than I had in weeks, because they'd tried to make me the villain in their story, tried to use public opinion as a weapon, tried to shame me into submission. But the internet, for all its flaws, had done something unexpected. It had held up a mirror. They deleted the post, but the truth stayed. Arity I hadn't felt in years. The kind that comes when you stop fighting against the current and finally decide which direction you're going to swim. I got dressed in comfortable clothes, ate a real breakfast, and made a list. Not a mental list, an actual written list on paper the way William used to do before tackling a big project. First stop, the bank. The branch was quiet when I arrived just after opening. A young woman at the desk greeted me with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" "I need to close an account," I said. She pulled up my information on her computer. "Which account would you like to close?" "The joint savings account, the one ending in 4793. I'd opened that account 5 years ago when William was still alive. We'd called it the emergency fund. After he passed, I'd kept Marcus's name on it, thinking it would make things easier if something ever happened to me, if I got sick, if I needed help. But emergency had become convenience, and help had become expectation. "Just to confirm, this is a joint account with Marcus Thompson," the woman asked. "Yes, you're listed as the primary holder, so you can close it without his signature. Would you like to transfer the remaining balance to your personal checking account?" "Yes, please." She processed everything efficiently. Within 10 minutes, the account was closed, and the money, what little was left, was safely back in my name alone. As I walked out of the bank, I felt lighter, like I'd just removed a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. Second stop, the law office. I'd met Edward Washington at church about 2 years ago. He was a semi-retired lawyer who still took on a few clients here and there, mostly estate planning and wills. He was kind, patient, and had that gentle way of explaining complicated things that made you feel smart instead of stupid. His office was above a bookstore downtown, small, tidy, filled with wooden shelves and soft lighting. He stood when I entered, extending his hand. "Mrs. Thompson, good to see you. Please have a seat. Please call me Eleanor." "Eleanor, then. What can I do for you today?" I sat down across from his desk, folding my hands in my lap. "I need to change my will." He nodded, pulling out a notepad. Of course. What kind of changes are we talking about? I took a breath. This was the part I'd been thinking about all weekend, the part that felt both terrifying and necessary. I want to remove my son and his wife as beneficiaries. Edward's pen paused for just a moment. Then he continued, writing, his face neutral. All right, and who would you like to designate instead? I want to establish a scholarship fund specifically for women over 50 who are trying to go back to school or start new careers. He looked up, something warm flickering in his expression. That's a beautiful idea. I've been thinking about it a lot, I said quietly. About women who maybe gave everything to their families and then found themselves alone. Women who put their own dreams on hold and now want a second chance. Women like me. I didn't say, but I think he understood. We can absolutely set that up, Edward said. I'll draft a document creating the fund in your name. In William's and my name, I corrected. The William and Eleanor Thompson Second Chances Scholarship. Edward smiled. Perfect. You can specify criteria for recipients, the application process, how the money should be distributed. We spent the next hour going over details. How much would go into the fund, how it would be managed, who would oversee the selection process. When we finished, Edward leaned back in his chair. I have to ask, and you don't have to answer, but is everything all right with your son? I smiled, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. Everything's exactly as it should be. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is admirable. A lot of people in your position would act out of anger, but this is constructive, purposeful. It's not about punishing him, I said. It's about honoring what my husband and I built. We worked hard for that money. We saved it with love and care, and I want it to go somewhere it'll be appreciated. Then this is exactly the right choice. Before I left, Edward promised to have the documents ready for my signature within the week. Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the kind that comes from finally making a decision that aligns with who you really are. My money wasn't going to people who saw me as an obligation. It wasn't going to fund vacations disguised as necessities or jewelry bought with guilt-tripped dollars. It was going to women who needed it, women who would value it, women who might write thank you notes and mean them. That evening, my phone rang again. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again and again. On the fourth call, I finally answered. Hello, Marcus. Mom. His voice sounded different, panicked. What did you do? You'll have to be more specific. The account, the savings account, it's gone. It's closed, I corrected. You can't do that. His voice rose. That was our account. It was my account, Marcus. Your name was on it as a courtesy. That's not... He stopped, took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer, more controlled. Mom, look, I understand you're upset about your birthday. We should have been there. But isn't this a bit of an overreaction? It wasn't just my birthday. What, Guy? It was Thanksgiving. And Christmas. And every Sunday you said you'd call, but didn't. It was 3 years of treating me like an ATM instead of your mother. Silence. Then, that's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. He sighed, a long, drawn-out sound. Mom, please. We need that money. The kids, don't, I interrupted. Don't use the children. They've been your excuse for too long. It's not an excuse. We really are struggling. Then why did Claire post pictures of her new diamond bracelet last week? Or the weekend spa getaway the week before that? Or the designer purses she bought the month before that? More silence. You saw that, he finally asked, his voice small. Everyone saw it, Marcus. Everyone. I heard him exhale. Look, I can explain. Claire, she has trouble with money sometimes. She buys things to make herself feel better. It's not her fault. Whose fault is it then? Mine for enabling it for 3 years. Yours for letting her spend money meant for necessities on luxuries. The truth is, you're not struggling because you don't have enough. You're struggling because you don't manage what you have. So that's it. You're just cutting us off after everything we've been through. I closed my eyes, suddenly tired. What exactly have we been through, Marcus? Because from where I'm sitting, I've been through 3 years of giving everything I had, and you've been through 3 years of taking it. That's not... Tell me this, I interrupted. What did you get me for my last birthday, or Christmas? Do you even remember the last time you called just to see how I was doing, not to ask for money?" The silence stretched between us thick with unspoken truths. "I thought so," I said finally. "Goodbye, Marcus." "Mom, wait," but I'd already ended the call. That night I sat in my living room with the lights off looking at old photographs. Marcus as a baby cradled in William's arms. Marcus at 8, proudly displaying a model airplane he'd built with his father. Marcus at 16 handing me those wilted daisies from his first paycheck. Where had that boy gone? When had he turned into someone who valued money more than relationships, who saw his mother as a resource to be depleted rather than a person to be cherished? Perhaps the bigger question was, when had I allowed it to happen? There's a particular kind of grief that comes with losing someone who's still alive. It's different from death, where there's a finality, a clear before and after. This grief is murkier, filled with what-ifs and maybes. What if I'd said no sooner? What if I'd set boundaries years ago? Maybe things would be different now. Maybe we wouldn't be here estranged by money and expectations. I went to bed that night carrying that grief, but also something else. The quiet determination of someone who finally understands her worth. The next morning, I received a surprising email from someone named Taylor Davis. The subject line read, "About Marcus." I almost deleted it, assuming it was another relative or friend recruited to guilt me. But curiosity won out. I opened it. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, you may not remember me, but I'm an old friend of Marcus's from college. We worked together at the marketing firm until about a year ago. I saw Claire's video and the aftermath and felt I needed to reach out to you. There's something you should know. Marcus hasn't been unemployed for the past year. He was promoted to creative director last March. It came with a significant salary increase, I know, because I helped him celebrate that night. I only discovered recently that he'd been telling you he was still out of work and struggling. I confronted him about it and he said it was complicated. That's when our friendship began to unravel. I've been wrestling with whether to tell you this, but after seeing Claire's performance online and knowing how they've been spending money while claiming hardship, I couldn't stay silent. You deserve the truth. Taylor Davis. I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking slightly. A year. Marcus had been working, not just working, but thriving for a year, all while telling me he was struggling to find steady employment. All while taking my money. All while watching me sacrifice my own health and comfort to help him. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I thought possible. This wasn't just taking advantage. This was calculated deception. I printed the email and added it to my folder of evidence. Then I sat down and did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I cried. Not delicate tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place I'd kept locked for years. I cried for the son I thought I had. For the mother I'd tried to be. For all the missed holidays and empty promises and wilted daisies that had meant nothing in the end. When I finally stopped, I felt hollow but clean, like a storm had washed through me and cleared away the debris. I picked up my phone and did something else I hadn't done in a long time. I called Janice and asked if she wanted to meet for lunch at the cafe downtown, the one with the good soup and fresh bread that I'd been too worried about money to visit before. "I'd love to," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Over lunch, I told her everything about closing the account, changing the will to scholarship fund Taylor's email. I expected to feel embarrassed admitting how thoroughly I'd been deceived, but instead I felt liberated. The truth, even when painful, sets you free in ways nothing else can. Janice reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Eleanor. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, especially with family." "I'm not sure what happens now," I admitted. Part of me hopes Marcus will come to his senses, but another part knows that might never happen. "Either way," she said firmly, "you'll be okay. You're stronger than you think." As I walked home, I realized she was right. I would be okay with or without Marcus in my life. I'd survived losing William, the love of my life, for over 50 years. I could survive this, too. When I got home, there was a small package on my front porch. No sender information, just my name and address. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a jewelry box. When I lifted the lid, I found a delicate silver bracelet. Underneath was a note in unfamiliar handwriting. "Mrs. Thompson, you don't know me, but I'm Claire's mother, Lorraine. I've wanted to reach out for years, but Claire and I have a complicated relationship. I saw what happened online, and I wanted you to know that not everyone in Claire's family approves of how they've treated you. This bracelet belonged to my grandmother. I'd like you to have it as a small token of apology for what my daughter has put you through. You deserve better. With respect and regret, Lorraine Baker. I sat on my porch steps holding the bracelet in my palm, marveling at how kindness can come from the most unexpected places. From strangers on the internet defending me without knowing me. From an estranged mother-in-law I'd never met. From friends who saw my worth when I'd forgotten it myself. And in that moment I knew that whatever came next I wouldn't face it alone. That week something strange happened. The silence I'd feared for so long, the silence that comes when you stop giving people what they want, actually felt peaceful. My phone didn't ring with urgent requests. My inbox wasn't filled with financial emergencies. My door wasn't knocked on by relatives trying to change my mind. For the first time in years, my time was truly my own. I started small. I called my doctor and scheduled all the appointments I'd been putting off. My knees, my blood pressure, my annual checkup. When the receptionist asked about payment, I didn't hesitate. I could afford my own health care now. I wasn't stretching my pension to cover someone else's life. "You've been rationing your medication," Dr. Miller said during my appointment, frowning at my blood pressure readings. "That's dangerous, Eleanor. Why would you do that?" I explained simply and without self-pity about supporting Marcus and Claire. Dr. Miller's expression softened. "Well, I'm glad you're taking care of yourself now, and I'm writing you a new prescription, no more cutting pills in half." "Promise me," I promised. Next, I tackled my house. Over the weekend, I hired a neighborhood boy to mow my lawn and weed the flower beds. I bought paint for the fence, and with Janice's help, spent a Saturday giving it a fresh coat of white. I replaced the broken porch light that had been flickering for months. Small things, all of them, but each one felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The following Wednesday, Edward called. "The paperwork is ready for your signature, and I've got good news. I spoke with the Community College Foundation, and they're excited about partnering on the scholarship. They'll help with the selection process and administration." "That's wonderful," I said, feeling a flutter of excitement. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It was becoming real. I went to his office that afternoon and signed the documents. The William and Eleanor Thompson Second Chances Scholarship would provide financial support to women over 50, returning to education or vocational training. The college would help select recipients based on need commitment and potential impact of their education. "The first disbursements can start next semester," Edward explained. "And I've structured it so you can continue adding to the fund. In fact, if you want to maintain your habit of setting aside money regularly—" "Every Friday," I said immediately. "700 just like before." He smiled. "Perfect. That will help build the endowment and support more women over time." As I left his office, I felt a profound sense of rightness. The money that had flowed from me to Marcus and Claire without appreciation would now flow to women who truly needed it, who would use it to build better lives, who would value the opportunity it represented. That evening, I got a text from Marcus. It was the first contact in over a week. "Mom, can we talk in person, please?" I considered ignoring it, but something told me this conversation needed to happen. After all the emails and texts and voicemails, we needed to face each other directly. "Yes," I replied. "Tomorrow at 2:00, my house." His response came quickly. "We'll be there." So Claire was coming too. I spent the rest of the evening preparing myself mentally for what was sure to be a difficult conversation. I didn't rehearse what I would say. William always said rehearsed words sound hollow. Instead, I focused on how I wanted to feel. Calm, dignified, truthful. The next day, at precisely 2:00 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I took a deep breath and answered it. Marcus stood on my porch looking uncomfortable in a button-down shirt that seemed too formal for the occasion. Behind him, half a step back, was Claire. She wore large sunglasses. Despite the cloudy day, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. Between them was a small gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They walked into my living room like they'd done 100 times before, but somehow everything felt different now. The air was heavier, the space between us more pronounced. Marcus sat on the couch, setting the gift bag on the coffee table. Claire remained standing near the window, her sunglasses still on her expression unreadable. I took the chair across from them, hands folded in my lap, and waited. Marcus cleared his throat. "So it's been a while." "Yes," I said simply. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "We wanted to come by and clear the air. Things got out of hand, and we think maybe there were some misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. That was the word he'd chosen. "Go on." "Look, we know we made mistakes. Claire didn't mean what she said about your birthday. She was stressed. We both were. Things have been really tough, and sometimes we say things we don't mean. I stayed quiet, just watching him, watching the way his hands fidgeted, the way his eyes darted around the room, landing everywhere except on me. Claire finally spoke, her voice tight. "We've apologized multiple times, but you won't even talk to us." "I'm talking to you now," I said calmly. "You know what I mean." She took off her sunglasses, and I saw the frustration in her eyes. "You cut us off without any explanation. You closed the account. You won't return our calls. We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know." Marcus leaned forward, his voice softening. "Mom, we're family. Family doesn't just give up on each other. We need you." There it was, the word that was supposed to make everything okay. Family. "Do you?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "What, do you need me or do you need my money?" His face tightened. "That's not fair." Neither was sitting alone at a restaurant on my 75th birthday. The room went silent. Marcus looked down at his hands. Claire shifted her weight. Her jaw clenched. I continued, my voice steady. "For 3 years, I sent you $700 every single week. I paid for your rent, your groceries, your car repairs, your vacations. I skipped my own doctor's appointments so I'd have enough to cover your emergencies." "We didn't ask you to do that," Claire muttered. "You're right. You didn't ask. You just expected." I leaned forward slightly. "And expectations can be crueler than demands because they don't give the other person the dignity of choice." Marcus finally looked up at me. "We were struggling, Mom. We needed help. And I helped over and over and over. But help isn't supposed to be one-sided. It's not supposed to come with forgotten holidays and unanswered calls and disrespect." "We said we were sorry," he said, his voice rising slightly. "You said a lot of things, Marcus. You said you'd come to Thanksgiving. You said you'd be at Christmas. You said you'd take me to dinner for my birthday. But the only promise you ever kept was spending my money." Claire stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're terrible people just because we needed financial support." "No," I said, standing up. "I'm acting like someone who finally realized her worth, and it's not measured in weekly deposits." Marcus stood too, reaching for the gift bag. "We brought you something. A peace offering. Can we just start over?" I looked at the bag, at his desperate expression, at Claire's barely concealed irritation. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who would have accepted that gift, hugged them both, and pretended everything was fine just to keep the peace. But I wasn't her anymore. "Marcus," I said gently, "do you remember what Claire said to me that night on the phone?" He hesitated. "She was upset. She said my age meant nothing to you. She didn't mean it like that." "Maybe not, but I decided to believe her." I met his eyes, holding his gaze steady. "So I made sure my money means nothing to you either." His face went pale. "What does that mean?" "It means I changed my will. It means every dollar I have is going somewhere it'll actually be appreciated. It means you don't have to worry about my age or my expectations or my feelings anymore." "Mom!" His voice cracked. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." I gestured to the coffee table between us. "I know you didn't come here because you missed me. You came because Taylor told you about my promotion last year. You came because you realized the well had finally run dry." His eyes widened. "Taylor, you talked to Taylor." "No. Taylor talked to me, told me everything about your promotion, your raise, the celebration. All while you were telling me you couldn't find steady work." The color drained from his face. Claire grabbed her purse. "Let's go. This is pointless." Marcus picked up the gift bag slowly, like he was moving through water. He looked at me one more time, and I saw something flicker across his face. Regret, maybe, or just disappointment that his plan hadn't worked. "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, Marcus." They left without another word. I watched through the window as they got into their car and drove away. And then I sat back down in my chair, my heart beating steady and strong, and felt nothing but relief. It had been a month since that confrontation, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Every Friday morning, I still went through my routine coffee medication, the full dose, now sitting at the kitchen table with my phone. But now when I opened my banking app at 9:00 a.m., I transferred $700 to the scholarship fund instead of to Marcus's account. The first month, I didn't hear anything more. I just watched the balance grow, imagining the women who might benefit from it someday. The second month, Edward called with exciting news. "We have our first applicant, Eleanor. Her name is Darlene Jackson. She's 53, recently divorced, and wants to go back to school to become a nurse. My heart lifted. Tell me about her. He read me parts of her application, how she'd spent 30 years raising her children and supporting her husband's career, how after the divorce she'd realized she had no degree, no recent work experience, and no way to support herself long term, how nursing had always been her dream, but life had gotten in the way. She sounds perfect, I told him. By the 3rd month we had 5 applicants. By the 6th month we'd awarded 3 scholarships. And then one Tuesday afternoon, a letter arrived. It was handwritten on simple stationery, the kind you buy at the drugstore. The return address was from a town 2 hours away. I made myself a cup of tea before opening it, wanting to give it the attention it deserved. The letter began, "Dear Mrs. Thompson, you don't know me, but you changed my life." Her name was Patricia. She was 56. She'd applied for the scholarship to finish her degree in social work after spending 20 years as a stay-at-home mother. Her husband had passed away suddenly, and she'd found herself alone, uneducated in the eyes of employers, and terrified of the future. When I got the letter saying I'd been chosen, she wrote, I cried for an hour. Not sad tears, relief tears, because for the first time in 2 years, I felt like someone saw me, like someone believed I was worth investing in. She went on to describe her first semester, the nervousness, the late-night studying the moment she got her first A on an exam, and realized she could actually do this. The letter ended with a single sentence that I must have read 20 times. Your kindness gave me hope when I had none. I sat there with that letter in my hands, tears running down my face, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long: purpose. Real, meaningful purpose. Not the hollow kind that comes from being used, but the genuine kind that comes from making a difference in someone's life who actually wants to be helped. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a special box I'd started keeping for the good things, the real things. That evening, Janice came over for dinner. We'd started doing that once a week, taking turns cooking. It was her turn to come to my place, and I'd made chicken and roasted vegetables. Nothing fancy, but enough. She noticed the box on the side table. What's that? Letters from the scholarship recipients, I said, smiling. Reminders. Reminders of what? That there are still people in the world who say thank you and mean it. Janice smiled that knowing smile of someone who'd watched me go through hell and come out the other side. You did a brave thing, you know, walking away. It didn't feel brave at the time. It felt terrifying. That's what makes it brave. We ate dinner, talked about everything, and nothing, laughed at things that weren't even that funny. When she left, she hugged me at the door and said, I'm proud of you. I'd heard those words before, but coming from her, they meant something. The following Sunday, I stood in church and looked around at the faces I'd known for years. People who'd watched me shrink, who'd tried to warn me, who'd waited patiently for me to find my way back to myself. After the service, Dorothy approached me. You look different, Eleanor. Different how? She touched my arm gently. Like you're not carrying the world anymore. She was right. I wasn't. I'd spent 3 years carrying the weight of other people's choices, other people's needs, other people's ingratitude. And the moment I set it down, I realized how much space it had been taking up space I could now fill with things that actually brought me joy. I started volunteering at the library on Wednesdays, just a few hours helping with the children's reading program. Watching their faces light up when a story surprised them reminded me why I'd loved working there in the first place. I planted a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Tomatoes and peppers and herbs I could use in cooking. Every morning I'd walk out with my coffee and check on them, marveling at how something so small could grow into something nourishing. I even started taking that painting class I'd always talked about. I wasn't good at it, but that wasn't the point. The point was doing something just because I wanted to. My house is quiet these days, but it's not lonely. It's peaceful. There are still moments when I think about Marcus, wonder if he's okay, wonder if he ever thinks about me with anything other than resentment. But those moments pass quickly now because I've learned something important in these months. You can't make people love you the way you deserve to be loved. You can't force gratitude or manufacture respect. All you can do is decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not. And I decided I wasn't willing to accept being invisible. Now every Friday morning I sit at my kitchen table with my coffee and my phone, and I send that $700 to women who need it. Women who will use it to build better lives. Women who understand the value of a second chance. Last week, I received another letter, this one from a woman named Grace, who used her scholarship to become a teacher. She'd included a photo of herself in her classroom, surrounded by students smiling like she'd found exactly where she belonged. I put that letter in the box with the others and thought about how it all came full circle. They taught me what my worth was by forgetting it, and I reminded them by walking away. 1 year had passed since I stopped sending money to Marcus and Claire. 1 year of healing, of rediscovering myself, of building something new from the ashes of what was lost. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. This final chapter reveals how I found peace after being used by my own family for years. The autumn air was crisp as I walked through the community college campus, leaves crunching beneath my feet. It was Scholarship Award Day, and for the first time I'd been invited to attend the ceremony in person. 7 women would be receiving the William and Eleanor Thompson Second Chances Scholarship today. 7 lives changed. 7 second acts beginning. I wore a new dress for the occasion, not the blue one that reminded me of empty chairs and broken promises, but a deep burgundy that made me feel strong. I'd gotten my hair styled that morning, and I wore my mother's pearls, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted to honor the moment. As I approached the administration building, I spotted Edward waiting by the entrance, his smile warm. "Eleanor, you look wonderful." He embraced me lightly. "Are you ready for this? It's a big day." "I think I am," I said, surprised to find my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. "I never thought I'd be here doing something like this." "Well, I'm glad you are. These women are so excited to meet you." Inside the college, President Dr. Collins greeted me with genuine enthusiasm. "Mrs. Thompson, what you've done is extraordinary. This program has already become one of our most meaningful initiatives." "I'm just happy to help," I said. "These women deserve the chance. Would you be willing to say a few words during the ceremony? Nothing elaborate, just a brief statement about why you created the scholarship." The old Eleanor, the invisible woman who shrank to accommodate others, would have declined immediately, terrified of being the center of attention. But I wasn't her anymore. "I'd be honored," I replied. The ceremony was held in a small auditorium filled with families, faculty, and community members. I sat in the front row beside Edward as Dr. Collins welcomed everyone and explained the purpose of the gathering. "Today we celebrate 7 remarkable women who have demonstrated courage, perseverance, and determination in pursuing their education later in life," she said. The William and Eleanor Thompson Second Chances Scholarship was established just 1 year ago, but its impact has already been profound. My chest swelled with pride as she continued. "Before we introduce our recipients, I'd like to invite Eleanor Thompson, the founder of this scholarship, to say a few words." Heart pounding, I rose and walked to the podium. The faces looking back at me were warm, expectant. I took a deep breath and began. "When my husband William and I were young, we didn't have much. He worked at the post office for 32 years. I worked part-time at the library. We saved what we could, penny by penny, building a modest foundation for our future. William always said we didn't need to be rich, we just needed to be steady." I paused, gathering my thoughts. After William passed away 5 years ago, I found myself asking what his life, what our life together had been for. What was the purpose of all those years of careful saving, of all those small sacrifices we'd made? The room was silent, attentive. It took me a long time to find the answer. For years, I thought my only value was in what I could give to others, specifically what I could give to my son and his family. I sent money I couldn't really afford to send. I skipped doctor appointments. I rationed my medication. I wore the same clothes year after year. I thought that's what love looked like, giving until you have nothing left. Several women in the audience nodded in recognition. But I was wrong. Real love doesn't deplete you. It doesn't leave you invisible. It doesn't take and take without giving back. Real love, like the love William and I shared, builds you up. It sees you. It remembers your birthday. I smiled slightly at the last part. This scholarship exists because I finally learned to value myself enough to say no to people who didn't value me. And in doing so, I found a way to say yes to all of you women who, like me, deserve a second chance to build the lives you want. I looked out at the audience, my voice growing stronger. When William and I saved all those years, we were building something. We just didn't know what. Now I do. We were building this moment, this opportunity to help women who have spent their lives helping others finally help themselves. Applause filled the room as I returned to my seat, my heart lighter than it had been in years. One by one, the scholarship recipients were called forward. Darlene studying nursing, Patricia pursuing social work, Grace already student teaching, 4 others with dreams just as meaningful, just as deserving. Each woman spoke briefly, sharing her story. As I listened, I realized something profound in helping them find their voices. I had somehow found my own. After the ceremony, there was a small reception. I was speaking with Patricia when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned and found myself facing a young woman in her early 20s. Something about her looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice hesitant. "I'm Lily, Marcus's daughter. My granddaughter. The little girl I hadn't seen in over a year, except she wasn't so little anymore." "Lily, silly," I breathed instinctively, opening my arms. She stepped into them without hesitation. "I've missed you, Grandma," she whispered. When we separated, I held her at arm's length, taking in how much she'd grown. "What are you doing here?" "I'm a student here now," she said. "I started this semester." "But I thought you were at State University." She looked down. "I was, but Dad and Mom couldn't. Well, things changed after you stopped helping. I had to transfer somewhere less expensive. The guilt I'd worked so hard to overcome threatened to resurface." "Oh, Lily, I'm so sorry." She shook her head firmly. "Don't be. It was the best thing that could have happened." She gestured around the room. "I would never have been here today if I'd stayed at State. I wouldn't have heard your speech. You were here for that." I felt suddenly self-conscious. "Every word. And you know what I kept thinking about, how I haven't called you in a year. How I let Mom and Dad's feelings dictate my relationship with you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Grandma." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, hugging her again. "You have nothing to apologize for." "But I do. I knew what they were doing wasn't right. I saw how they treated you, but I stayed silent because it was easier." I guided her to a quiet corner where we could talk more privately. "Lily, you were caught in the middle of an adult situation. That wasn't your responsibility to fix." "Maybe not, but I'm an adult now too, and I want to make my own choices." She pulled out her phone. "I have something to show you." She opened her photos and scrolled to an image that made my breath catch. It was a picture of a small bouquet of daisies, slightly wilted, arranged in a water glass. "Last week I got my first paycheck from my work-study job in the library," Lily said. "I remembered Dad telling me once about how he bought you daisies from his first paycheck when he was 16. I wanted to do the same, but I didn't have your address." She looked up, eyes shining. "And then I saw the flyer about today's scholarship ceremony, and there was your name. It felt like a sign." I touched the screen gently, my finger hovering over those imperfect flowers that meant more than any diamond bracelet ever could. "They're beautiful, Lily." "I have the real ones in my car," she admitted with a small smile. "I was going to try to find you after the ceremony, but then you were right here." As we talked, catching up on a year of missed moments, I felt a presence behind me. Turning, I saw Edward with an uncomfortable expression. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "I thought you should know. Marcus is here." My heart skipped. "Here now," Edward nodded. "He's by the entrance. Said he came with Lily, but wasn't sure if you'd want to see him." I looked at my granddaughter, who suddenly seemed nervous. "Did you know about this?" "He dropped me off," she admitted. "But I didn't think he'd actually come inside. He hasn't even gotten out of the car in weeks, Grandma." Something's changed. I took a deep breath. "Where is he?" Edward pointed toward the main doors. Through the small crowd, I could see Marcus standing awkwardly just inside the entrance, hands in his pockets, looking nothing like the confident man who had once tried to manipulate me with a peace offering. "Should I tell him to leave?" Edward asked, protective. "No," I said after a moment. "It's okay. I'll talk to him." Lily squeezed my hand. "I can come with you." "Thank you, sweetheart, but I think this needs to be just between your father and me." I straightened my shoulders and walked across the room, acutely aware of every step. When Marcus saw me approaching, his posture stiffened like he was bracing himself. "Mom," he said, his voice barely audible. "Marcus." I kept my tone neutral. "Lily said you've been in the car." He nodded, eyes darting around the room before settling back on me. "I wasn't sure if... I didn't want to ruin your day." "Why are you here?" He swallowed hard. "I heard your speech." "You were in the auditorium." I hadn't seen him. "In the back." I slipped in after it started. His eyes were red-rimmed like he'd been crying. Mom, what you said about love not depleting you, about being invisible. He trailed off, struggling. I waited, refusing to fill the silence for him like I'd done so many times before. You were right, he finally said. About everything. About how we treated you. About what we took from you. About Claire. Where is Claire? I asked, noticing her absence for the first time. Gone, he said simply. She left 3 months ago. Found someone with more money, I guess. He gave a bitter laugh. Funny how that works. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. It's what I deserved. He hesitated, then continued. After you cut us off, things fell apart pretty quickly. Without your money covering the gaps, we had to face how badly we'd been managing what we had. All the unnecessary spending, the credit card debt we'd hidden from each other. I listened silently as he continued. Claire blamed me for losing your support. I blamed her for spending money we didn't have. We started fighting all the time. The kids were miserable. He ran a hand through his hair, which I now noticed was streaked with gray that hadn't been there a year ago. It was a mess. Still is, really. And the promotion, the one you hid from me, his face flushed with shame. I lost it. 6 months ago. Budget cuts. Turns out when you're living beyond your means, even a good salary isn't enough of a cushion. I see. Mom, I'm not here to ask for money, he said quickly, reading my expression. I swear, I wouldn't do that to you again. I heard about this ceremony from Lily and I wanted to see you, to tell you that you were right. And I'm sorry. More sorry than you can possibly imagine. I studied my son, this man who had once been the little boy William and I had raised with such hope, such love. I searched his face for signs of the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. What do you want from me, Marcus? I asked directly. Nothing, he said. Just for you to know that I understand now. What we did. What I did. And I'm trying to be better. He glanced across the room to where Lily was watching us. For them, if nothing else. The children are with you, he nodded. Full time now. Claire visits sometimes when it's convenient for her. It's been an adjustment. I can imagine. I thought of all the times Marcus had used the children as emotional leverage, and now here he was actually parenting them on his own for the first time. They miss you, he said softly. Tommy asks about you all the time. Wants to know why Grandma doesn't come over anymore. The mention of my youngest grandchild sent a sharp pain through my heart. Tommy would be 8 now, the same age Marcus had been when William taught him to change a tire. I've missed them too, I admitted. An awkward silence fell between us. Then Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. You don't have to read it now or ever, but I needed to write it down, everything I should have said a year ago. I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. Thank you. He nodded, then glanced at his watch. I should go. Tommy's at a friend's house, and I promised to pick him up by 5. He smiled faintly. Being a single dad means keeping track of schedules. Who knew? As he turned to leave, I found myself calling after him. Marcus. He stopped, looking back. Lily mentioned daisies. Do you remember that? His expression softened. Of course I do. First paycheck I ever earned. You kept one in your Bible. I still have it, I said quietly. Something passed between us, then a flicker of the connection we'd once had, buried beneath years of misunderstanding and hurt, but not entirely gone. Maybe sometime, I said carefully, you could bring Tommy over, for cookies or something. Hope bloomed in his eyes, cautious but real. He'd like that. We both would. After he left, I rejoined the reception, the envelope tucked safely in my purse. Lily looked at me questioningly. Everything okay, Grandma? I smiled, surprised to find that I meant it. I think it might be eventually. That evening, alone in my quiet house, I finally opened Marcus's letter. 8 pages, handwritten, the ink smudged in places like he'd been crying while writing it. I read every word, absorbing his remorse, his explanations, his promises to do better. It wasn't enough to erase the past. Nothing could do that. But it was a beginning. Spring arrived with a burst of color in my garden. The tomato plants I'd started from seeds were thriving, the peppers beginning to flower. I'd expanded my vegetable patch this year, adding carrots and green beans and a small herb section filled with basil and thyme. Every morning I still walked out with my coffee to check on them, But now I often had company. Tommy had taken a keen interest in gardening his little hands, eager to help pull weeds and water seedlings during his weekend visits. "Grandma," he'd asked one Saturday, his face serious beneath his baseball cap. "Do plants have birthdays? Not exactly," I'd replied, smiling at his thoughtfulness. "But they do have seasons, times when they grow and times when they rest." "Like people," he'd said wisely. "Dad says you were in your resting season before, but now you're growing again." Out of the mouths of babes, the scholarship program had indeed grown beyond what I'd initially imagined. Word had spread and applications had increased threefold for the second year. Edward and the College Foundation had helped me expand the criteria slightly to include women over 45, allowing us to reach even more deserving candidates. Every Friday morning without fail, I still transferred $700 to the scholarship fund. But now I'd added a second transfer of $50 into a special account for Tommy and Lily's education. It wasn't much, but it was something I could give freely, joyfully, without expectation of return. My relationship with Marcus remained complicated. We weren't close, not like before. Too much had happened for us to simply return to the way things were. But we were building something new, something honest. He came to Sunday dinner at my house twice a month, sometimes with the children, sometimes alone. We talked about real things, now his struggles as a single parent, his efforts to find better work, his attempts to manage his finances more responsibly. I didn't offer advice unless he asked for it, and I never ever offered money. That boundary remained firm, a line neither of us was willing to cross again. Claire was largely absent from their lives, showing up occasionally for holidays or special events, always with something expensive and impractical for the children. Marcus had confided that she'd moved in with a wealthy businessman in another state, someone who could give her the lifestyle she'd always wanted. "I should have seen it sooner," he'd admitted during one of our Sunday dinners after the children had gone to play in the yard. "She never really loved me for me, just for what I could provide, or what I could get you to provide." "People often show us who they are," I'd replied gently. "We just don't always want to see it." He'd nodded, understanding that I wasn't just talking about Claire. One Tuesday afternoon in April, Edward called with exciting news. "Eleanor, we've scheduled the first graduation ceremony for scholarship recipients. 5 women who received funding last year will be getting their degrees next month." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled. "The college wants to make it special. They're planning a small reception before the main commencement and would like you to be the guest of honor." "Me, oh, I don't know about that." "These women specifically requested it. They want to thank you in person." How could I say no to that? The day of the ceremony arrived warm and bright. I wore a light blue suit I'd bought specially for the occasion, my first truly new outfit in years. Janice had come with me to pick it out, insisting I needed something that reflected my new sense of self. "No more invisible clothes for an invisible woman," she'd declared, holding up the suit with its subtle shimmer. "You're going to shine today." The pre-commencement reception was held in a small garden area on campus. Tables had been set with white cloths and spring flowers. A banner read, "Celebrating Second Chances," in elegant script. As I entered, a burst of applause caught me off guard. The 5 graduating women stood together, each wearing her cap and gown, beaming at me. Darlene, now a certified nurse. Patricia, with her social work degree. Grace, already hired as a full-time teacher. 2 others I'd come to know through letters and occasional meetings. Dr. Collins welcomed me warmly. "Mrs. Thompson, these women have prepared something special for you." Each graduate came forward one by one, sharing how the scholarship had changed her life. Their words washed over me like a healing balm. "Because of you, I can support my family without fear. Because of you, I remembered what it feels like to believe in myself. Because of you, my daughters see that it's never too late to follow your dreams." Patricia, the last to speak, approached with a small wooden box in her hands. "Mrs. Thompson, we wanted to give you something to express our gratitude." She opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with 5 charms. Each charm represents one of us, our journeys, our gratitude, our promise to pay your kindness forward. I touched the bracelet with trembling fingers. "It's beautiful." "May I?" she asked, and when I nodded, she fastened it around my wrist. "We know nothing can repay what you've given us," Patricia continued. "Not just financially, but in showing us that we matter, that our dreams matter, that it's never too late for a second chance." As I looked around at these women, strong, capable, determined, I realized something profound. In helping them find their worth, I'd fully reclaimed my own. After the reception, as everyone prepared to move to the main commencement, I noticed a familiar figure standing at the edge of the garden. Marcus, dressed in a suit I didn't recognize, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Marcus," I said, approaching him. "I didn't know you were coming." "Lily told me about it," he said. "I hope it's okay. I wanted to understand what you've created." "Of course it's okay." He gestured toward the graduates now gathering their things. "It's incredible what you've done for them." "They did the hard work," I corrected gently. "I just provided an opportunity." "An opportunity you could have given to me," he said quietly, "if I'd been worthy of it." The old me would have rushed to comfort him, to take away his discomfort. But the new me understood that some discomfort was necessary for growth. "You always had opportunities, Marcus. What you didn't have was appreciation for them." He nodded slowly. "I know that now." He hesitated, then added, "I'm going back to school too. Night classes in accounting. It's not much, but it's a start." Pride, genuine pride, not the kind that comes with strings attached, filled my heart. "That's wonderful. Tommy thinks it's hilarious that Dad has homework," he said with a small smile. "He sits with me at the kitchen table doing his spelling while I work on spreadsheets." The image was so far from the entitled man who'd expected weekly deposits that I hardly recognized him. Maybe people really could change when they had no other choice. "I should let you get back to your graduates," he said after a moment. "I just wanted to stop by and—" He trailed off, searching for words. "See what real gratitude looks like," I suggested gently. He flushed but nodded. "Something like that." As he turned to leave, I felt a sudden impulse. "Marcus, we're having a small dinner at my house tonight. Just Janice and a few friends from church. The graduates will be there. You and the children are welcome to join us if you'd like." Surprise crossed his face, followed by cautious pleasure. "Really, you wouldn't mind?" "I wouldn't have asked if I minded." "Then yes, we'd love to. Thank you." That evening my house was fuller than it had been in years. Laughter echoed from the living room. The dining table was extended to its full length with extra chairs borrowed from neighbors. The graduates, still in their caps, took turns sharing stories from their school experiences. Lily helped serve the cake I'd baked that morning. Tommy sat beside Darlene, utterly fascinated by her tales of the emergency room. Marcus spoke quietly with Edward in the corner, asking questions about the scholarship program. As I moved through my home refilling glasses and collecting empty plates, I caught sight of William's photograph on the mantel. He was smiling in that quiet way of his, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. "You did good, Ellie. You did real good." Later, after most of the guests had left, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Janice. She watched as I rinsed dishes, a knowing smile on her face. "What?" I asked, catching her expression. "Just thinking about how far you've come," she said. "A year ago you were afraid to stand up for yourself. Now look at you changing lives, including your own." I glanced down at the silver bracelet on my wrist, the 5 charms catching the light. "I had good friends to help me." "We just reminded you of what you already knew deep down." She hesitated, then added, "What about Marcus? Do you trust this change in him?" I considered her question carefully. "Trust is earned, not given. He's making progress, but we have a long way to go." "And you're okay with that, with the uncertainty?" I smiled, surprising myself with how genuinely peaceful I felt. "Absolutely, because now I know my worth doesn't depend on whether he figures it out or not. I'll be fine either way." She hugged me, then a fierce embrace that said more than words could. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden under the stars. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers. Somewhere nearby, crickets chirped their evening song. I closed my eyes and simply breathed, savoring the quiet contentment that had become my new normal. My phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be Janice checking that I was okay after the busy day. Instead, it was from an unknown number. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Lorraine Baker Clare's mother. I heard about your scholarship program from Marcus. What you're doing is remarkable. I've been thinking a lot about second chances lately. Would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime? I feel we might have much to talk about." I stared at the message, surprised, but not shocked. Life had a way of bringing unexpected connections. "I'd like that," I replied simply. As I looked up at the stars again, I thought about all the women whose lives had intersected with mine, the scholarship recipients, Janice and my church friends, even Claire and her mother. Each connection a reminder that no one is ever truly alone, even when they feel most invisible. Tomorrow I would wake up at 7:30, make coffee, take my medication, sit at my kitchen table, and at 900 I would send money not out of fear or obligation, but out of hope and purpose. Because I'd finally learned what William had tried to teach Marcus all those years ago: giving means nothing if it depletes you. True generosity flows from fullness, not emptiness. And for the first time in years, I was full. The community college auditorium buzzed with excitement. It was the 3rd annual scholarship ceremony, and this year we had 15 recipients, a record number, thanks to several local businesses that had joined our efforts, matching my weekly contributions. I sat in the front row now, comfortable in this spotlight that once would have terrified me. The silver charm bracelet jangled softly on my wrist, no longer just 5 charms, but 17, one for each woman who had graduated through our program so far. Dr. Collins approached the podium, smiling warmly. Before we begin today's ceremony, I have a special announcement. The William and Eleanor Thompson Second Chances Scholarship has been recognized by the State Education Board as a model program for adult learners. They've invited Mrs. Thompson to speak at their annual conference next month about creating sustainable community-based scholarship initiatives. Applause filled the room. I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, still not entirely comfortable with recognition, though I was learning to accept it graciously. And now, Dr. Collins continued, I'd like to introduce someone else to say a few words. A person who has witnessed the impact of this scholarship from its very beginning. I looked around confused. This wasn't on the program. To my surprise, Marcus walked onto the stage. He looked different today, confident, but humble, his posture straight, but not rigid. He nodded to me respectfully before turning to the audience. For those who don't know me, I'm Marcus Thompson, Eleanor's son. He cleared his throat. And I'm probably the last person who should be standing here today. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 3 years ago, my mother was sitting alone at a restaurant on her 75th birthday. A table set for 5, waiting for family who never showed up. His voice wavered slightly. That family was mine. My wife, my children, and me. We didn't show up because we'd found something better to do. Something more important than celebrating the woman who had given us everything. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, the memory still sharp despite the time that had passed. For years, my mother sent us money every week. Money she couldn't really spare. Money that came from my father's pension and their life savings. Money that was supposed to sustain her through her retirement. He paused, visibly gathering himself. And what did we give her in return? Empty promises. Forgotten holidays. Unanswered calls. The room was utterly silent now. When she finally stopped sending money, when she finally valued herself enough to say no, we treated her like she'd committed some terrible betrayal. We didn't understand that the real betrayal had been ours all along. He looked directly at me, then his eyes shining with unshed tears. What I didn't know, what I couldn't see through my own selfishness, was that my mother's courage wouldn't just change her life. It would change dozens of lives. Because when she stopped pouring resources into an ungrateful family, she started investing in grateful strangers. He gestured to the scholarship recipients seated nearby. These women understand something I failed to grasp for too long. Gratitude isn't just saying thank you. It's honoring the gift through your actions. It's recognizing the sacrifice behind the giving. It's showing up when you say you will. My tears were flowing freely now, but I made no move to wipe them away. 3 years ago, I lost my mother's financial support. But in the process, I almost lost something far more valuable, her presence in my life, my children's lives. He took a deep breath. I'm still working to earn back her trust, still learning what it means to give without expectation, still trying to be the son she deserves. He turned to face me directly. Mom, I can never repay what I took from you, but I can try to honor it. Which is why today I want to announce that I've taken a position on the Scholarship Selection Committee. Dr. Collins has kindly allowed me to volunteer my accounting skills to help manage the fund's growth and ensure its sustainability for years to come. Gasps and applause broke out. This was news to me as well. It's not much, he continued, compared to what you've given, but it's a start, a way to be part of this incredible legacy you've created, not as someone who takes, but as someone who gives back. As he stepped away from the podium, the audience rose in a standing ovation. I stood too unable to speak, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't quite name. When Marcus reached me, he simply held out his arms. I stepped into them without hesitation, embracing my son, not with the desperate gratitude of someone afraid of being abandoned, but with the quiet joy of someone who had found her way home. The reception afterward was lively, filled with conversation and laughter. I moved from group to group, listening to the recipients share their plans, their dreams, their determination to make the most of this opportunity. Darlene was there now, the head nurse on her hospital floor. Patricia had started a support group for women re-entering the workforce after divorce or widowhood. Grace was pursuing her master's degree in education while teaching full-time. So many stories, so many lives changing one degree at a time. As the crowd began to thin, I found myself standing near the refreshment table with Lorraine Baker Claire's mother. Our coffee meetings had evolved into a genuine friendship over the past year, both of us finding unexpected common ground in our experiences. Claire called yesterday, she said quietly, stirring her tea. First time in months. Oh, how is she? Lorraine sighed. The same, always chasing something just out of reach. Her new husband isn't as wealthy as she thought. She's already talking about moving on. I nodded, feeling not vindication but a profound sadness for a woman who might never understand what true wealth looked like. You know, Lorraine continued, watching you build all this, she gestured around the room. It's inspired me to make some changes, too. What kind of changes? She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. I've decided to go back to school myself. Art history. I always loved it, but never had the chance to study it properly. Lorraine, that's wonderful. I'm terrified, she admitted. At 68, I'll be the oldest student in every class. But if these women can do it? She trailed off, looking at the scholarship recipients. You absolutely can, I assured her. And you know what? We might just have a scholarship with your name on it. Her eyes widened. Oh no, I couldn't. You can and you will, I said firmly. That's what this is all about after all. Women supporting women. Later, as the reception ended, I found myself standing in the empty auditorium. The chairs had been cleared away, the banners taken down. But something lingered in the air, a sense of possibility of futures redirected, of lives transformed. Marcus appeared in the doorway, Tommy's hand in his. Ready to go, Mom? We've got dinner waiting at home. Home. Such a simple word, but so profound in its meaning. I'm ready, I said, joining them. As we walked to the car, Tommy chattering about his science project, Marcus carrying my purse like his father would have done, I thought about the journey of the past 3 years. From invisible to seen. From depleted to fulfilled. From alone to surrounded by a family, both biological and chosen. William had been right all those years ago. We didn't need to be rich, we just needed to be steady. And now, finally, I was. That night, after everyone had gone and my house was quiet once more, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my special box of letters. There were dozens now, each one a testament to a life changed, a dream pursued, a second chance embraced. I added a new one to the collection, a thank you note from Marcus. Not for money, but for the example I'd set. For showing him what real strength looked like. For giving him the chance to become a better man, a better father, a better son. Tomorrow was Friday. At 7:30 I would wake up, make coffee, take my medication, sit at this very table, and at 9:00 I would open my banking app and send money where it would do the most good. Because now I understood something fundamental: my worth had never been measured in weekly deposits. It had never depended on whether someone showed up for my birthday or remembered to call. My worth was inherent, unchangeable, mine alone to recognize and honor. And in recognizing it and finally becoming visible to myself, I had somehow become visible to others as well. I closed the box of letters and placed it back on the shelf right next to William's photograph. In it, he was smiling that quiet smile of his, the one that always said, "You're enough, Ellie. You always have been." And finally, after all these years, I believed him. If you followed my story until the end, I want to ask you, what would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever had to walk away from someone who took you for granted? How did you find your peace? Comment below and let me know which part of my journey resonated with you most. And if you haven't already, please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss another story. Your support means everything.